Hey there, folks. My name is Michael Bertrand, and welcome to What to Do If You're Stupid. See, what we in the above-average intelligence bracket often don't grasp is just how frightening it is to have someone who's more intelligent than you around. Intelligence is, I think, the most frightening possible advantage someone can have, because there's no way to overcome it. If someone is smarter than you, and I'm not just talking about like a little smarter than you, I'm talking about basically the large gap there is between the normal population and the above average population. It's not merely a difference in quantity, it's a difference in quality. There's a whole different level of thinking that you can access if your IQ is high enough. And that, for very good reasons, scares the hell out of people. When someone is smarter than you, you can't figure out whether to trust anything they say. You can't figure out whether they're on your side or not. You feel like they could fool you, they could rip you off and humiliate you, and you'd have no idea. So people develop certain coping mechanisms to deal with that. Here's the basic idea. To a person of normal intelligence, every high intelligence person is a wizard. They can do powerful things that the normal person does not understand, and have abilities that the normal person can't even comprehend, and is therefore much more powerful than they are, and in a way that they can't understand. If someone is stronger than you, that's easy to understand. Anyone can understand strength, or faster, or bigger, or anything like that. But if someone's qualitatively smarter than you, what do you do against that? Well, hence the title of this talk. You develop coping mechanisms, and you rely on those, because even though they're not as good as actually being intelligent, they're sound enough way to protect yourself from those that are smarter than you. Now, one of the most basic and most popular ways is to find an authority you trust. Someone who does seem smarter than you, but who otherwise seems like a good person, a nice person, someone who's on your side, someone who thinks like you do. And then you basically believe what they tell you. This is exactly how Fox News works, by the way. Another coping mechanism is essentially mistrust. One can argue that if you can't figure out whether someone is telling the truth or not, if they're so smart that they could fool you 3 different ways and completely take advantage of you, then the safest route is to just not trust people like that. Assume that they're lying. Assume that they're out to get you. Now, for those of us who are just innocently intelligent, this is very hurtful, because we know we're perfectly nice people, and we haven't done anything to cause people to mistrust us, and we have good intentions and good hearts. But when you look at it from their point of view, arguably they don't really have much of a choice. When you can't tell whether someone is telling the truth, you have to fall back on whether they seem trustworthy or not. It has to be an emotional thing, really, whether you get a good feeling from them or not. And seeing as any of us could potentially be, evil and rip them off or do any kind of horrible thing, and they'd be they'd be potentially as helpless as a kitten, they just blanket mistrust us. And I don't know a way around that, but I think it's an extraordinarily important question, because if we, the liberal intellectuals of the world, want to tempt the masses away from the idiot box of Fox News and that kind of thinking, then we have to come up with a way not merely to be right, because of course we're right, obviously we're right. We have to come up with a way to get them to see us as being on their side and nice, and that means, in general, we have to talk to them like, well, what from us would seem like we're talking to them like they're stupid. And if a liberal intellectual was to talk to another liberal intellectual that way, it would be talking to them as though they're stupid. But but these people they're not retarded, they're simply average intelligence. And you will get nowhere with them by frightening them with words they don't understand or concepts that are too complicated for them. You will just sound like a bad person. You will just sound like you're trying to get away with something, or at the very least, that you think you're smarter than them and you can just make them do whatever you want. That's why the right wing has had such a great history with the whole liberal, college-educated liberal elite thing. That makes it sound like, essentially that people who sound smarter than you are against you. And you can only trust, people who speak your language to you. And we have to, as liberal intellectuals, we have to get around that. We have to talk to them like the conservatives talk to them, just with the message different. Related to the previous thing, another of their coping mechanisms is to essentially reduce the world into concepts they can understand. And of all the coping strategies, this is the most necessary one. In fact, us liberal intellectual types, if we were to really look at ourselves, realize that we've done the same thing. I mean, the universe is probably far, far, far more complicated than we can understand from the point of view of all the things there is to know about it. So, odds are, even the very brightest of us has, in some sense, broken the world down into concepts they can understand. It's just that the concepts that the normal person can understand are much simpler. That means you have to be willing to talk to them not just in the language that they understand, but you have to be willing to get over your desire to give the thorough and correct answer, the answer that would persuade you, and honestly you're going to have to maybe take some of the concepts and simplify them. And that means that what you say to them might not be the whole truth. But this isn't the classroom. This is reality. This is the world. You're not being judged on whether you've got the right answer or not. In this case, the judgment comes on whether they believe you or not, whether they believe you, whether they trust you, whether they understand that you're on their side, and that you're, in a sense, one of them, or at the very least, you are a compatible kind of person to them. You can't just act as though you're still in college and these people are your professors. You have to be willing to, and there's no better term for this, dumb it down. I titled this "What to Do If You're Stupid" because I wanted it to, well, A, to grab your attention, but B, to get across the idea that these people act this way for a reason that is extremely logical from their point of view. They have to protect themselves from people who can intellectually bully them, and if they were to just leave themselves open to us, who knows what we could do to them. And if we want to essentially spread the cause of enlightenment and liberal values, the values on which all our societies are based, by the way, we're going to have to understand why they do these things and how to get around it. It's not that the average person is conservative. It's that the average person is not as smart as we are. And so far, for about 30 years now, only conservatives have been willing to talk to them in a language they understand. We need to change that. And that means we're going to have to modify some of our basic attitudes. Well, that's it for me today. Talk to you later, folks. Why is it I always get closer when I do this? Like I'm leaning into the conversation. Oh well, whatever.